today's live stream. Hello, hello. I already saw in the chat that a few of you are online. So, hi Tracy, hi Mom. All right, welcome to today's live session. We are in the month of April, which is also Native Hawaiian Plants Month. And I thought we'll focus on Native Hawaiian flowers this month. Today, we're gonna draw and paint a native Hawaiian flower that's called ohai. It's this one here. The flowers I've seen here so far. So they grow close to the beach, and we have the beach park here in the area, which showcases native Hawaiian plants. And what I found most interesting about these plants are that the young leaves are covered with silky hairs. I mean, you kind of want to touch them. They look so fluffy. And that is apparently a natural sunscreen. So, furry leaves as a sunscreen. All right, but let's turn around the camera and let's get painting. Hold on, let me put this here. All right, let's turn around. There we go. Always have to be careful where I grip the phone so as not to push the power button. All right. And on my desk you can see the flower we painted last week, which was the Ilima flower. Okay, for some reason this is trickier today. Okay, I think I got it. Let me just double check. Okay. As always, please let me know about the audio and, zooming in, zooming out. You know the drill. Okay, my lovelies, let's look over to the chat. Hi, Nadine. Hi, Steph. Hi, Tracy. All right. Okay, so let's get started with the supplies I'm using today. So you should have received my newsletter yesterday, which listed all the supplies, but for those of you who aren't subscribed yet, I'm just gonna go over it one more time. I'm also going to leave a link down below so you can subscribe to the newsletter if you like. Let's start with the paints. So today I'm going to use my own handmade Aloha watercolors, and we have 4 non-shimmers and then also a gold shimmer. As always, you don't have to use Aloha watercolors. You can use similar colors from other brands, just what you have at hand. I'm using a lemon yellow, which is called lemon. I have a Mayan red, which is called Iiwi, which is a Hawaiian bird. And I have Malachite, which is actually made from the actual Malachite gemstone. And then I have Eucalyptus, which is a green earth pigment. And this is Hula Queen, which is kind of like a yellowish gold shimmer paint. If you don't have that, you can just as well use a glittery jelly roll pen, because we're really only going to use the gold for the frame today. You can see the shimmer here. Hi Katja. Ah, das ist ja schön. Okay, next is the paper. The paper I used for the original painting was a bamboo cotton mix. I think it's let me quickly check. I think it's Clairefontaine. This one here, which I dearly love. I think it's great for illustration. However, today I'm going to use my sketchbook that I have been using for the whole challenge so far. It's a Moleskine. It has 200 GSM paper. It's a mix of wood pulp and cotton, so 25% cotton, 200 GSM. So it's not really thick, but it can take enough watercolor for my purpose. And I'm going to turn it so that, hold on, I can, let's see, I have to rearrange my table a little bit, put my iPad on the side. Hi, Sylvia. Tracy, I think that's a different, that's not Sylvia, that's Sylvia. Okay, let me just check if that's on screen. Okay, here we go. Put this over here. And I have a little ceramic palette, mixing the colors and checking the opacity of my paints. I'm using a size 6 round brush today with a very sharp pointy tip. This is by Shimoni Art. So this lady lives in Switzerland, but the brushes are actually made in Germany. But use any kind of round brush you have, depending on the size of your paper that you're using. If you're using a larger paper, you know, you want to use a larger round brush. And if you do a teeny tiny painting today, you're going to want to use a small round brush. I have a bunch of water-soluble colored pencils. Most of them are the Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer. And the colors are cobalt green. I have deep cobalt green, light green, lots of greens, and madder. And then these two are by Inktense, by Derwent. So Derwent is the brand, English brand. They're called Inktense, and I have Sicilian, yellow, and tangerine. Again, you know, you don't have to have these brands. You can use any types of colored pencils. You can use regular colored pencils too, but as I always say, you have to really make sure to let your paints dry before you apply the colored pencils. So using water-soluble colored pencils really makes your job easier because you can go over the paper while it's still damp. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm using 2 water containers, one to rinse my water first, or my brush, I should say, and then to pick up fresh water from the other one. And I do have a little yogurt container, which I'm going to use to make my round frame, but you can use any type of round object you have to draw your circle. Okay, let's start with a quick sketch of the ohai flowers. So they have a truly interesting shape. They look like this. I want to show you a photo here. Let me just make sure there's no glare. Hold on. Yeah. So you can see that the upper petal has a very distinct shape, and then those lips at the bottom make the distinct shape. And these flowers actually come in really different colors. So I've seen them range from bright red to yellow and everything in between, almost pinkish red. And on this photo, you can really see very well how light colored the leaves appear. And that's because of the fur, I say fur, because of those silky hairs they have. And once the leaves mature and are more strong, they turn a little darker. Also interesting is that the leaves actually smell really nice. So the flower itself doesn't smell, or not much, but the leaves smell really nice. Kind of like a vanilla. Yeah, very, it's a bit similar to Maile, but not as strong. Oh, Tracy, here's your cup. Okay, so for the shape, you can think of these flowers as a reverse heart. see. Okay, hold on. Sorry, I have a little bit of a different setup today with my camera, I feel like. Okay, so just think of it as a reverse heart that you start your shape with, and then you can add a little extra to make it more like an ohai flower. So you can add a little dent here, for example. Make the curve a little more shallow. And then let's say you are looking at the flower from the side. You can make one side a little more narrow and then the other one a bit more thick, like here. And again, you can then change the shape slightly by adding this curved line over here. And then lastly, you know, this, I wouldn't even say that there is a heart shape in there, but let's try. So reverse heart shape or upside down heart shape, and then you kind of make it just bigger here on the side. Okay, let's move over to the watercolor paper. So I usually use a pencil or a color pencil for my sketch. And I think I'm just gonna do a colored pencil today, so you can see it better. But for those of you at home, just make your pencil marks very lightly, not as strong as I do here. Okay. This, by the way, is my latest and greatest find from our largest supermarket here, which is called Costco, for all of you who are not in America. This is a huge, huge store, like Walmart, but even more groceries. And for the longest time, they only had yogurt without fat. I mean, you know, I grew up in Germany, so milk products are so important. It's like essential. And the fact that they only had like these super weird diet yogurts, I'm sorry I say it that way. But for me personally, it's strange. So I was so happy when I found the whole milk yogurt. I think the first time I bought like 4 cases, so each case have 2, and yeah, they were gone very fast, let me tell you. Super happy. And yeah, those containers are really sturdy, so I actually keep them. They have a lid too. They're super useful for, you know, storing things in them. I use them for when I go make my pottery stuff. You know, I use them to keep my slip in there, and like my tools and everything. So yeah, my latest and greatest find at the supermarket. So any of if you have any latest and greatest finds at the supermarket? All right, let's go back to our sketch. As you can see, I have 3 flowers. So let's add 3 dots where we want to place them. 1, 2, and 3. They're not all on the same height, so you can think of a little triangle in which to place them, like this. And then for the branches, we'll start putting one up here with a curved line, one over here. So you're basically covering the upper third of your circle. It's going to be the first 3 branches up here. And then we have one going down on this side and then one over here. However, I think it's better to put in the flower shapes first and then add the branches for the bottom part of our circle. So let's start with this one. We'll do the reverse heart very lightly. The left side is a bit more narrow than the right side. And then the bottom part with a curved line. Now we're going to change the shape a little bit. It has a dip here at the top. And we go over and make that heart a little wider here at the top. Okay, so we turned our heart almost into a square. There we go. Number one, and then the second one here in the center. We'll do our reverse heart again, very lightly, and then just add a few dips, like this. Okay, I'm looking over to the chat. Oh, I can see that Tracy retracted some messages. I didn't even know that was possible, you guys. That's funny. It's like WhatsApp. You can unsend messages. Now I want to know what she said. Tracy, what did you say? Now I'm curious. Oh, woohoo, Ducky. What did Tracy say? I want to know. Okay, and number three, up here, again, reverse heart shape. And we're going to turn this more into a square again. So first, a little dip here at the top. And nice wobbly lines. And then for this particular one, I want this upper part to be large, pretty large, like this. Yeah, how do we get to this shape from a heart shape, eh? Okay, and now that we have our flowers, we can add the branches. So one is going out from here. Then we move over to the right-hand side and add one like this, and then the last one goes down like this. When I made up this design, I first of all looked at my reference photos to see how the plant is usually situated, and it really is sitting in those leaves, and there are a lot of leaves. So as you can see here, it's almost it's a very leafy plant, and it has a few flowers. So it's not like it's very plentiful with flowers. So I was going for an overall circle shape, and then I wanted to reflect that circle motion within my frame as well, so that it's kind of pleasant to the eye and it's a very round experience, so to speak. Now for the small leaves, you can add, you can go ahead and add every single leaf to your design and your sketch. But you can also freehand it and just go in with the brush. It depends a little bit on how you work and what feels comfortable to you. I know that for a lot of you who are over in Europe, it's very late already in the evening. So you might just, if you're painting along, you're probably already tired, and maybe you just feel better by having your sketch ready in every detail, so you can just basically sit down and color it in. For me, I would usually now go ahead and not even draw in my leaves. I'll just draw in my branches and then add the leaves freehand. So why don't we do a mix? I have drawn in my leaves here, and then I'll leave some branches just for me to go in with my brush and add the leaves. Make sure that some of your leaves overlap. That's also very common with this plant, that the branches are kind of wild and they overlap a lot. Hi Janice, hello. Hi there in Utah. I just we watched a documentary yesterday about what's the gazier called? The large one in the national park, Yellowstone. So we watched a documentary about that and it was so stunning. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's not that we have a lot going on here on the Big Island right now as well, with Kilauea going off like crazy. If you haven't seen it, you guys, you have to Google it. Kilauea eruption going on. It is a fountain of lava. It is insane. It looks so cool. All right. But yeah, I was also very fascinated by that documentary about the Yellowstone National Park and that water fountain geyser shooting out of the ground like clockwork. It's so funny. It's like every, they said, I think now it's every 94 minutes or something. Jamesy, what was the geyser called from the documentary in Yellowstone? Old Faithful? Oh, haha. Okay, Old Faithful. And then they said he's not so faithful because he's not on time as much as he used to be, right? Yeah. Okay, 1 second. Okay, I'll be right back, you guys. Just 1 second. Okay. All right, let's start with the watercolor layer. The first one, we'll start with lemon yellow, and we're just gonna lay down a wash on our flowers. And you can see, because I used water-soluble colored pencil, that they are already blending in with my watercolor layer. It's quite a beautiful effect. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that better. Okay. And next, I'm gonna just cover all my flowers . And if you have used pencil, regular pencil, no worries. We're gonna add red later on and then also some colored pencils. So we're gonna cover it all up. But isn't that a lovely effect with the water-soluble colored pencil? You can even rub it, rub your brush in some more to make the pigments from the colored pencil mix with the watercolor even more. Or you can leave it. So I usually really like having at least a little bit of the texture of the colored pencil left in my illustration. Okay, okay, we'll continue with the leaves in the next step. We're gonna, excuse me, draw in the branches and then the leaves. Okay, I'm using Malachite paint. This is a very interesting particular color. So if you don't have Malachite, you can use, let me see, a turquoise, like a phthalo turquoise. If you have Aloha watercolors, you could use jade wine and just water it down a little bit, or even mix it with opaque white. Or you can use a very light green and mix it with a tiny bit of blue. But that's only if you really want to be very close to what I'm doing here. But please feel free to use any green you have. Maybe not the darkest green you have, just a light colored green. I'm holding my brush upright to get those lines in. And then another one here. Because this paper is not 100% cotton, the paint dries very quickly. It's also a rather dry, hot day today here in Kona. But please be careful. If your yellow paint is still moist, you should just make sure you keep a little bit of distance to your flowers as not to blend and mix everything. Okay, now for the leaves, let's start with the free-handed ones. So now I'm holding my brush at a 45-degree angle approximately, and I'm starting with the outer side of my leaf. I'm using a lot of pressure for my first part of the stroke. So I'm pressing down the belly, and then I'm lifting up like this for the stem. You can, of course, also paint your leaf in 2 strokes. So you just start with one side, then add the other one, and then add the stem. And you can also do this very quickly, like I would usually do. So it really depends on what kind of look you're going for. If you want a very exact leaf shape, then you want to use more strokes to define it and to have a crisp edge like here. And if you want to go about it more quickly, then you might just use quick strokes like these ones here. I'm moving over to my sketch where I have defined the leaf the leaf shapes more clearly. So in this case, I'm just drawing them in. I'm just adding my paint exactly in those areas where my sketch is. Make sure you use different amounts of paint for every leaf. So don't use the exact same amount of pigment. What I mean by this is that I want you to have leaves with a thicker concentration of pigment, like here, and then also leaves that use more water. This way, you have the illusion of some leaves being, turned or a little further away. It just creates more movement and interest, dynamic in your painting. Also make sure that you don't use too much pigment overall for this step, because we're going to add the other green on top of this one. So we'll naturally have darker and lighter areas just by using the green earth pigment. Okay, so I just changed to my eucalyptus color, the green earth. I'm activating it. And now in those areas that are still wet, just gonna drop in my eucalyptus color. So especially here at the bottom of the leaves that are connected to the branch. And again, don't do this for every leaf. We want to create some variety. Over here on the left hand side, my paint has already dried, and then I'm going to go over some of the leaves that I already painted, but instead of drawing the exact same shape in the exact same place, I'm adding another leaf on top. And in the ideal case, it should create an overlay effect. This only works if your paper and your paint is already dry though. So if it's not, then just give it a little more time. You can be very meticulous about this, of course. You could, for example, create a design where every other leaf is in the other color. So one leaf malachite, one leaf green earth. Or you can just be wild and free about it and then just, you know, add a few leaves here and there. It's totally up to you. So I created a effect, every other leaf effect up here in this row. And now I feel like that the bottom part is a bit too light colored. So I'm just gonna add a few strokes here, like this. All right, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. Let's continue to our other leaves here at the bottom. Where are you guys? You abandoned the chat. Are you all painting along and just so focusing, concentrating? Okay, I am switching back to my Malachite color. Tracy is concentrating, very good. No message retracting this time. Okay, so let's make these leaves a little bit larger here at the bottom. I want to give the impression that these leaves are closer to the viewer, which means that they will appear a little bit larger in comparison to the ones up here at the top. Again, if you don't want to guess where the leaves go, you can, of course, sketch them in first. Okay, here we go. And while the paint is still wet, I'm adding Eucalyptus. Just kind of randomly into the wet paint. Nadine says, me too, talking and drawing at the same time is difficult. I have to say, it was really, when I started with these live streams, it was, yeah, it was truly a challenge at first. And you know, I'm not in English is not my first language, so that made it even trickier. But in the meantime, I have to say I really enjoy it. It's so, you guys, it's almost as if when I'm talking I can't focus on my painting as much, and it makes me take more risks, not overthink it naturally, because I have to talk and explain what I do. And I often feel that the paintings I create during the live streams, even though they are more messy, they're not as exact, often it's kind of, how do you say it? The scale is off maybe. You know, usually something is wrong about it, but I like them more because they feel more spontaneous, I guess. They feel more free. That doesn't mean that I want you guys to now start talking while you paint, but it's just an interesting experience that I had. From the time when I started with these live streams a couple years ago to now, where I do them pretty regularly. So tell me, you guys, when you paint, do you listen to music sometimes? When you're not listening to me, obviously? Or are you maybe somebody who likes to just paint in quiet, just listen to the dogs bark? Maybe some podcasts? That's what I love to do. So when I'm not talking to myself when I paint, I actually love listening to audiobooks or podcasts. Tracy listens to the birds outside. Oh, so romantic. Well, for me right now, it's sirens and birds that I can hear, but no dogs barking right now. That's something. All right, you guys. So how are you liking it? Are you about as far as I am right now, or should I give you a couple more minutes? Tracy says, here machine pounding. Yeah, it is. It is in the neighborhood. They are developing a new area in the neighborhood. And for all of you who are not familiar with how the ground is here on the Big Island, it is mostly lava rocks. And there are also some blue, I think it's called blue rock, which is super dense. It's a type of granite, I believe. So in order to build anything on this island, you basically have to get a huge roto hammer thing, like a huge chisel, and then you have these excavator machines pound the stones and the rocks all day. Like that. Dun, 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 dun. So yeah, Presslufthammer all day. Yeah, getting used to it. It's not, I mean, by all means pleasant, but it is far away enough that I can just kind of ignore it. Katya says she likes to listen to Hörspiele. Okay, so a Hörspiel is actually like an audiobook, but every character in the book is actually represented by a different voice. So you usually have a whole crew of actors talking in this audiobook. So it's like a dramatized version of an audiobook. Yeah, those are great. I love those too. Just not so easy to find them, I feel like. It's much easier to find an audiobook where just one person reads the whole book to you rather than having a dramatized version. Okay, let me check the paper and how wet or dry it is. It looks pretty good. My flowers are dry, so that's perfect to add the next layer to our little ohai flowers. Okay, Tracy says, and you have noisy coqui frogs. Oh, yes, we do. So coqui frogs are little pests that were brought in from Puerto Rico, I believe. And over there, they are about the size of a half pan. However, here in Hawaii, they're big brothers now, I'm telling you. They're like the size of 4 pans. And what they do is they sing very loudly, like Pavarotti, like they're like opera singers. And when you have 1,000 of them in your yard, it's it's really loud, I can tell you guys. And the funny thing is, they don't actually sound like frogs, they sound more like weird birds. So they make a sound that sounds like, and then times 500 or 1,000. So the first year after I moved here, I had to sleep with earplugs, I swear. And then I got, you know, kind of got over it. Okay, what I'm doing here is mixing my lemon yellow and Mayan red to make a nice orange. If you have orange, you can just use orange, of course. I'm trying to adhere to the rule that I set up for this challenge, which was basically use one color plus another color. And of course, as you know, I already broke my rule several times because we're definitely using more than green plus 1. Okay, I created a very watered down, darkish orange. And let's move over to the flower. 1 stroke for these bottom parts. Don't cover the whole part here. Just do quick strokes and leave some of the background color visible. And then a few quick strokes on top of the plant here, like this. Again, try to leave a few highlights. You want to follow the general shape of the flower when you add those quick strokes. And then over here. So we will add a little more color to these, a darker red. And we're going to do it while the orange is still wet. So let's move over to our red. You can take it straight out of the pan and then just dab the red into your flower. And you want to do it along the edges. So here, here, and down here. And also on the outer edges of this side. So this way we are defining the outlines of the flower without drawing an actual outline. And then in here, we're adding the red in this part to indicate that there's kind of a shadow, so that the upper part of the flower is standing out more. It's closer to the viewer than the bottom part here. This paper is drying so quickly. Look at that, it's already dry. Okay, let me just add some red here. And then also some more here to define the outlines. Another thing I want to do is to add some red to indicate that there's a dip in the flower here at the center. And let's add one in here as well. Okay, and over here. A dip or a fold, I should probably call that. I'm rinsing my brush. I'm going back to my lemon yellow. I just want to emphasize a few parts of this flower that are yellow. So typically in the ohai flower, in the center, we have a yellow mark. Let me show you in the photo here. You can see that yellow mark here. Be careful if your red paint is still wet, you want to leave a little bit of a space in between the yellow and the red so they don't mix. And just add a dollop of yellow. And what I did over here is also paint in some more spaces, in between spaces with yellow. That's totally an interpretation of mine. In the actual flowers, you probably wouldn't see that much of a tonal difference. You know, it's all very smooth. The gradients are very smooth in these colors usually, in these flowers. So you can see it changes from red to peach, but in a very like ombre-like fashion. And then down here from red to pink. But I do like to you know, interpret the flower a little bit in my own way, and that's why I'm adding some bright yellow in between and on top of my orange, just to make the flower stand out even more from the background. I want these to really pop, and because I'm using complementary colors, you know, the reddish orange and the green, it will pop even more. Okay, so for the next steps, I'm going to add some colored pencil all across. And then last, we're gonna do the frame. The frame will be gold paint and also some colored pencil details. Okay. So we're almost done with the watercolor part. We'll just only need the gold. So I'm gonna use my color pencils next. Put my watercolors to the side for now. Okay, as I mentioned before, because my watercolor water-soluble color pencils are very soft, I can go over everything even if it's still damp. But just to be on the safe side, I'm gonna start with my leaves that are already dry. So at the bottom of every branch, I will add a dark line. So you can use any type of dark green pencil. It doesn't have to be dark cobalt green. And just add a dark line on the underside of every branch. That just snapped. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there for now, the part that snapped off, and pick it up later. Okay, and then when you have a vertical branch, just put it on the right hand side here. And at this top branch, we're also gonna put it on the right hand side. I'm not making my line go all the way through. I'm interrupting the line whenever I have a leaf attached. And these two. All right. Next, you can choose a few of your darker leaves to add a little bit of texture with your dark green pencil. So all the leaves that are already darker, just gonna add a few quick strokes at the bottom of the leaf. So the part that is connected to the branch, we'll just make that a little bit darker. In case you have overlapping leaves, like on this side here, you want to go in and add a little bit of a shadow on the leaf that is underneath the other one. So in this case, all my darker green leaves are on top and the lighter ones are at the bottom. I'm just adding a little bit dark green colored pencil to make the overlapping effect even more visible. And then very lightly also adding a little bit of texture within that darker leaf. And also on this side. Okay, let's move down to these ones here. And the same principle, I'm adding a little bit of dark texture to the leaves that are already darker. Okay, let me see what I'm gonna do with that little guy here. I'm drying my brush and I'm just gonna try and flick it to the side. Flick. Okay, that worked. You know, you guys, I feel like the humidity here in Hawaii makes my colored pencils go even softer. The water soluble color pencils, and they just snap more easily, I guess. Okay, let's just step back for a second and see how the balance is. So right now I have a lot of dark spots here at the top of my drawing, of my painting, and then of course the focus on the flowers. So I feel like I want to add a little more here at the bottom just to balance things out. So let's make those dark leaves a little even more dark. I'm always looking for an overall balance in my designs. So we already have a lot of balance going on just because of the fact that it's a circle, and then we have, you know, a circle shape within our circle in our drawing. But then I also want to look at a balance in the tonal contrast. So I don't want one part of the painting to be way darker than the other parts, because then you have an imbalance. You always want to look to create like equal amounts of darkness and lightness in your painting, and that's true for all your illustrations, or at least for all of my illustrations. Of course, you can work with a certain imbalance to create a specific effect. But for a composition like this, a floral composition, I definitely wanted to look balanced. So an example for a imbalanced painting where you are working with the fact that it's not imbalanced is, for example, a sunset painting. You know, imagine the whole sunset is like the whole sky is dark, the ocean is dark already, and you have like one dot or one circle that is bright orange for the sun that is setting. You know, naturally all the focus is going to be on the sun, and it will work because it's like a dramatic focal point in your painting, and it doesn't need to be balanced. But as I said, for something like this, I really want to have a nice balanced composition. Okay, Tracy says, sounds like a bird is copying the sounds of the machine pounding. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, especially the myna birds are very talkative, and I feel like they are doing that. However, the bird you're referring to is one of the cardinals. I feel like they answer to James too. So James is often out there and whistling with the birds, and they have this question and answer game going on. Okay, so we are done with the leaves completely. We can add a few more strokes within our ohai flowers to add a little more texture. It's not necessary, I mean, if you like this more abstract look for your flowers, then please feel free to leave them like that. But I always like to go in and add a little bit more texture with my colored pencil. So right now I'm using my Durant Tangerine, and I'm adding orange strokes following the shape of my flowers. So you want your strokes to be curved and to follow the shape. Always follow the shape when you add shadows, when you add texture. I mean, I know that there's a thing like cross hatching out there, but you can even do curved cross hatching. So my tip is always, always to follow the shape of whatever subject or object you are drawing. It just makes it more organic and natural looking. Okay, I'm switching to my madder colored pencil, and now I am emphasizing the outlines. So where you already have red paint, you can go over it and add red colored pencil. Put a special emphasis down here. So you really want to make this part here dark red to indicate a shadow. See how that now makes the upper part stand out more? Same with all the other flowers. Go over every part that is already red and add a few strokes with your color red pencil. If you feel like your flowers are still too abstract and don't have enough definition, you can add a few outlines with your red pencil. I recommend that you don't draw one continuous line. Just try and give your flower a little bit of definition. Just try little strokes rather than just outlining the whole thing. If you are a fan of fine liners though, I can encourage you to maybe try and add some thin black lines to your design. I usually tend to use colored pencil for my outlines. I just like that organic, less defined look. But I feel like for a lot of botanical drawings, a fine black outline is also very nice to look at. So it really depends on your taste and what kind of style and look you're going for. All right, I feel like that's enough for texture and outlines for my flowers. So let's move on to the frame. Okay, 1 second. Okay, apologies you guys. What I'm doing here in the background, I know it's crazy, but I'm actually filming with a second camera here. I just wanted to create a little reel about me posting a live stream. So, okay, we're gonna switch back to watercolor, and now we're gonna use our sparkly gold Hula Queen shimmer watercolor. As I said before, if you don't have a shimmery watercolor, don't worry, you can just use a gold jelly roll pen. It actually might be easier for you to create a continuous monoline with a jelly roll pen, but if you want a little bit of a challenge, just try doing it with a brush. Again, always important for this type of line is to hold your brush in a more upright position. And my other tip is to move your paper. Turn your paper so you do one stroke at a time. Don't try and do the whole thing in one go. That's crazy. So you just do one part of the frame. And because my leaves are actually going outside of the frame, I have an even easier job here because I don't have to draw my line continuously. At this point, I would encourage you to turn your paper to the angle that is most comfortable for you. So for me, it's always going left to right. You know, as a right-handed person, if you're left-handed, it's probably going to be the exact opposite. And then just continue using the tip of your brush. I usually try to not turn my paper when I do live streams, but I find that drawing circles is really almost impossible with not turning the paper. Don't worry if you go off the sketch line, because we are going to add another line with a colored pencil. Okay, I'm rinsing my brush and putting it to the side. All right, so now I'm back with my red colored pencil. Let's see. Yeah, it dries really fast. You want to maybe wait till your gold line is dry, because it's so easy at this point to smudge it. So let me think how I'm gonna do. Well, I'm just gonna have to be real careful. So I'm holding my pencil in a kind of a weird way, just to make sure I'm not smudging the line over here. Hold on, I could also, you know what? I'm gonna just do it like this. Okay, so I'm doing a second line right next to my gold. Okay, again, turning my paper. And it is overlapping, so I'm not too concerned about getting the line exactly next to my gold line. It is overlapping a little bit. I really like the effect it creates. It just makes the gold be a bit darker, stand out more. And because it's a colored pencil, it is definitely a bit easier to create that curved line than with a brush. This way, you can also draw over any lines of your sketch that are still peeking out. Again, be careful if your gold paint is still very wet, because you might smear your line. So if you want to make sure, just let it dry first before you apply the colored pencil. Okay, there are also ways to make this circle using a tool again. So you could theoretically let everything dry completely, then take your, you know, whatever you used, do the colored pencil circle first, and then do the gold. I just personally find this way makes more sense for me, but I just wanted to point out that there are, of course, are different techniques to create that frame. Okay, and next we're gonna add a little bit of a zigzag line. If you like this, then you can be done at this point. It's just something that I like to do with my designs. I had a time, let me get that sketchbook, where I did a lot of these circle designs with with a zigzag line around it. So for a while, I enjoyed that circle design a lot. I think there are more in here. Let's see. There should be, oh yeah, here. Okay. So you see this was done with ink and watercolor. Yeah, so it was just let me see, what was it, 2021, when I did a lot of circle designs with a little frame. So instead of doing a design like this, you can also maybe add a second larger line. So just a second circle in another color, or you could do a little snake line, like a wave line. Yeah, that's totally up to you. And again, you can of course pre-sketch this design as well, but because I have done these quite often, I'm gonna just freehand my little triangle line here, going, oops, going all around. The only thing you want to be careful with is that your little triangles are about the same size, height and width, so you don't have to be super consistent with them, but you know, about the same size would be good just for optical reasons. I'm switching to my orange, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a little dot in between my triangles. And you can do the frame in any color you like. I would, however, suggest that you use one of the colors that you used in your painting. So red, orange, yellow, or green. And my mom says, Keiko-chan, diese Farbkombination mit Gelb und Orange-Rot ist wunderschön. Jetzige Bild ist noch schöner geworden. Ja, gell? Das finde ich eben auch. Ich finde es jetzt auch schöner als das Original. Okay, so my mom said she really loves the color combo of yellow and orange and red, and she says that she actually likes today's version better than my original painting. So we're gonna do a side by side in a minute, but I think I feel the same way. Okay, and if you like, you can add another circle outline, but I'm gonna stop here for now. And zoom out a little bit, and let's do a little side by side. So, well, yeah, I have to agree. I like today's version better. I really love that the flowers look, I don't know, they stand out more, they pop out more. Maybe it's because I used more red watercolor. Whereas in here, it is more about the texture. So I used more colored pencil, dark colored pencil, on top of a lighter watercolor bottom layer. I feel my frame is a little more even today. I did this, I think, really quick, so that was kind of messy. I think I like the leaves better in this part here than over here. But you know, it's interesting. I like both versions for different reasons. I think this is more of a textured, quick sketch design, and this looks a bit more refined. I love how the flowers pop out here. So yeah, I like them both. I do prefer this one from today a little bit more. Okay, let's turn the camera around for wrapping things up. Hold on, just carefully grab the phone. Okay, hold on. Okay, you guys, I hope you enjoyed today's session. I don't think there will be another live session this month. There might be one at the end of the month, but I am going to Germany in 2 weeks. And because I do have a big commission and collaboration that I'm working on with Tanya, Miss Nice Day, I am very busy until I leave. So just a little heads up. I will, however, probably be able to do another tutorial, another step-by-step. And I will keep you updated. So please subscribe to my newsletter if you haven't already. I'll leave a link down below. And as always, I would be super thrilled if you could leave me a thumbs up on this video, or even a little comment down below if you've enjoyed it. And also, as always, if you've painted along, please tag me over on Instagram at the Aloha Studios and at Alohawatercolors so I can see what you created. All right, you guys have a wonderful day, evening, morning, and I'll see you next time. Happy creating. Aloha.